Welcome to Resilience Redefined. I'm your host, Michael Ostrolenk. This show is about building better humans, institutions, and systems. On the show, I'll be interviewing many different experts from across many different fields, including human optimization, health and fitness, team building, mind-body medicine. In the institutional space, we're looking at different institutions and how we can create new ones, new models and maps, including in medicine, in education, in intelligence community, in law enforcement, in the military, especially in the special operations community. Thanks for being here and enjoy the show.
Hey, Brent Fuchs, it's good to see you. How you doing today?
Doing well. How are you doing, Michael?
Good. So you're a 20-year veteran, but you have an interesting career. You spent part of your time as an Air Force EOD and then part of your time Army Special Forces as a medic. So before we get kind of into your thinking on resilience and leadership, can you explain all that to me and the listening audience?
Yeah. It definitely was an interesting career. That's a good way to put it. I started out actually to understand why I took the path I did. It goes back to pre-joining the military. I was dead set on joining the military. I was 21 years old, 9/11 happened, and that just strengthened my resolve. Started going through the recruiting process and went on a backpacking trip with my brothers right before I was going to go to MEPS, and blew out my left ankle. Had a tendon tear free from the tendon sheath, my peroneal tendon, and my left ankle ripped loose, and ended up backpacking out with my brothers. Wasn't sure what was going on, but I knew it was not good because we were in the backcountry. Got out and went to the doctor that day, and they referred me over to ortho, and I ended up getting surgery, as one would imagine. Couldn't walk for 6 months. When I did, there was a lot of physical therapy that went into being able to walk again. And the doctors told me, hey, you might run. You might run again, but there's a solid chance that you won't. And I was like, okay. So as you might imagine, that made it difficult to get into the military, especially back then. Like, recruitment was at an all-time high. Patriotism and the desire to serve after 9/11 was pretty high. So I struggled until about 2005 to get into the military. And I had all but given up when an Air Force recruiter contacted me, and they're like, hey, are you still interested in the military? And I was like, yeah, but you guys probably aren't going to take me, but sure, we'll talk. And went in, and to my surprise, like, they're like, yeah, we'll take you, and you scored high enough. What do you want? And I was like, well, this is available explosives. Sounds exciting. Let's do that. Right. So I went down that path and loved it quite a bit. Graduated from Nav School EOD in August of 2006, and then came back and just started looking for opportunities to deploy. It ended up training a bunch. It was just honestly a very surreal time for me at that point in my life. And then from there, I ended up deploying to northern Baghdad in 2008, October of 2008. And we were right near Sadr City. So I saw a lot of crazy stuff during that time that I hadn't mentally prepared myself for as well as I thought I should. But I met a lot of Navy SEALs. I met a lot of Green Beret. My older brother was a Green Beret at that point, and my younger brother was looking at becoming one, and had a great deployment overall, despite everything else that happened. Came back and was like, you know what? I think I need to do more.
And about your time,
Sorry.
Yeah. That's a question.
Yeah, go for it.
Looking back, what did you learn about yourself in terms of, because I know resilience is a really important thing that you think about and tell yourself. What did you learn about yourself in that whole process?
I learned a lot about myself in that whole process. Summing it up, I learned that I was capable of a lot more than I thought I was. And I think that was one of the big drives. Like, I came back and I was pretty shook up, and it took me, I sat down, I remember, with a couple of my team members at the time. We had a pretty small EOD team. And I remember one of them, Kevin, asking him, how do you deal with this? Like, how do you deal with the emotions, like driving down the road and seeing like a box on the side of the road and like tensing up and thinking it might blow up on you or something like that. And he was like, man, you just gotta find a reason to move on and understand that you can't control the world. And I was like, yeah, no, that's fair. Anyway, that kind of that lesson stuck with me quite a bit. Like, I can't control the world. Went through a relationship that did not go well, and ended during that time. And I was like, you know what? I think I need to do more. Like, I've enjoyed my time here, but I realized I was constantly deploying with Army soldiers, and so I was like, you know what? I'll switch over to the Army and try some Army EOD, and maybe I'll go be CAG or Delta Force support as an EOD tech. And um, anyway, went through the transition process, got hit with an admin error. It wasn't like a recruiter lying to me and everything, like people say. But I came in on a contract because when you switch services, I had to go back through a form of basic training, which was at the time it was a warrior transition course. And with that, you have to have a training MOS. Well, when I went back through MEPS, EOD wasn't available that day. But 25 Quebec was. So I talked to my recruiter, and he was like, I'm a 25 Quebec. He's like, and that MOS is going away. He's like, it's weird to me that that's available, but yeah. And I was like, okay, well, that's simple enough. I'll take that. And then once I finish the basic training course, I'll just go back to EOD. And I had gone so far as to reach out to a unit in Colorado in 71st EOD group. I was like, hey, this is my situation. And they're like, yeah, we'll do the paperwork to pull you over. Well, the admin issue was someone higher up was deployed and had put in an open request for 25 Quebec soldiers to just come and backfill them. And then in the middle of a deployment, forgot to turn that request off. So no matter how many 25 Quebecs they made, it just kept pulling them that way. So when I graduated the basic training course, the warrior transition course, they're like, hey, you can't turn down a training opportunity. This is a critically manned career field now. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. So I spent 3.5 months in Georgia, in Augusta, Georgia. And it was, yeah, I mean, it could be worse places. The golf was great, right? And they actually had a phenomenal golf course there. So I was like, yeah, pass the time well. And then got sent to Arizona as a signal soldier. And when I got there, I was on rear detachment and we were overmanned because of this admin issue. And so I brought it up. I was like, hey, I want to transfer. We're obviously overmanned. And they're like, well, until this admin issue gets resolved, there's only one way out. And that's to go into special operations or something along those lines. And I was like, okay. So there wasn't a special operations recruiter at the base I was in southern Arizona. I was at Fort Huachuca. And so I called over to Fort Bliss and sent the recruiter my paperwork. And he was like, hey, when do you want to go? And I was like, as soon as possible. 2.5 weeks later, I was in Fort Bragg at selection, not knowing what I was going to do. I was just like, I'm here. Let's do this. Got selected, got assigned Arabic and 18 Delta, which made me laugh quite a bit because I was like, I'm good at explosives. I have a commo MOS, and you guys want me to be a medic. Okay. I guess that makes sense. And so, it was good. Became then over the next 3 years, basically, got back to the Q course, trained, became a medic, learned Arabic as well as I could. I'm not going to claim that I'm a master at it, especially now that I've been removed from it a little bit. But it was just a really great time. And then I got assigned to 5th Special Forces Group. Sent to Afghanistan a few days after arriving here. And it was, and I mean, honestly, at this point in time, I was single, is kind of living the dream, just like couldn't believe all this was happening. Um, Came back, got put on a normal team. That was a special tasking when I went to Afghanistan. So I wasn't with a bunch of other Green Beret. I was with other government agencies and just really learning a lot more than I ever thought I could. Um, and came back, met my wife. We dated and got married right before my next deployment in 2016. So, yeah, I went to Afghanistan in late 2014, came back in April of 2015. We started dating and we got married in March of 2016 and I deployed in April. Yeah, real tight timeline. And did that for quite a while, got injured a few times. Ultimately, that led to me leaving 5th Special Forces Group. I dropped into 20th Group in the National Guard for a while to kind of transition out and started working for a large government contractor. And now I train explosive EOD soldiers in the Army on integrating with special operations. And I consult the 52nd EOD group on how we can best do that.
One of the topics, two of the topics that are of great interest to you, is, as I mentioned already, is resilience and leadership. And I'm really curious for you, like taking your experiences in the Air Force, taking your experiences in the Army Special Forces, talk to us about maybe the differences in leadership, if there are similarities, what you take from that when you give your public talks and you do your consulting work, and resilience in those spaces as well.
Yeah. Yeah. No, the Air Force definitely had a different feel to it. Um, I would say it was a little more friendly. I remember coming back from my deployment to Iraq, um, and meeting a new commander for the first time, and he realized where I had been and had seen a lot of the reports of everything that had happened. And I flew military back to the United States, and then they put me on a civilian flight, and I flew back into the Salt Lake City airport because I was stationed in Utah at the time. And I met my team there, said hi to them. They grabbed my weapons. They're like, "Hey, don't come back to the base. Go home. Just like take the weekend, come back in Monday or Tuesday, and we'll sort through all the paperwork and get you on leave and like reintegrating." And I was like, "Okay." And there was a lieutenant colonel there. I had never met him, but they're like, "Hey, this is our new commander." I was like, "Oh, thanks, sir. Nice to meet you." Went to shake his hand, and he hugged me, and I was like, "Okay." I was like, "All right." And so that was an interesting difference there versus the Army. I don't know that to this day I've ever gotten a hug from a commander in the Army. Right. Um it's I think a lot of people in the Army enjoy the enjoy the mentality that that it's not an easy life, right? I think they kind of embrace that a little bit more. And as far as resilience goes, I think it's very different in that regard. Like almost in the Air Force, there was a lot of politics for me, even at a low level enlisted. Um, I was very aware that who I talked to and what I said was constantly under a microscope. Um, in the Army, it was I'm not going to say that doesn't exist. It does, but it wasn't until I was like in the senior NCO ranks and dealing more specifically with special forces and the geopolitical problems that come in with that that I was exposed to that. You know,
What were some of the takeaways for you, like in terms of when you went through the training to be in Army Special Forces, and not even the medic training, just
yeah,
what did you learn about yourself in that process?
so much. Oh, man, starting out. A lot of it was when you go through selection for special forces, it's 21 days and there's hard things that happen, right? It's physically demanding. You don't sleep as much as you would like. And you're always kind of on edge. But the big thing there was a lot of people quit because not because it was so hard, but because they thought they had failed, right? The cadre rarely yelled at us, but on occasion they'd come up to you and they usually carried around a notepad or something like that. And they would ask you a question. They'd be like, candidate, why are you doing this? And so at the time they give you a number. I was number 78. And so on occasion I'd be doing something and they'd come up and they'd be like, candidate number 78, like, why are you tying that? And I would look down and be like, because I think a square lashing would be the best for this contraption that we're trying to build. And they're like, hmm. And then they just would write stuff in their notebook. You had no idea what had happened. And a lot of people couldn't handle that ambiguity. They would like dive inside of themselves and just be like, I think, is it worth it going on? Did I just fail now and I'm going to suffer for another 14 days? You know? Yeah. And I think that was a big part of it, was the mental resilience of like, I can't change the outcome. Right.
I
But
think it goes so earlier, kind of from the Stoic philosophy, but you learn it practically on the ground from the gentleman you spoke about.
yeah,
Like, I do about these IEDs I might be passing by on the roads here in Solder City.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. And I mean, I look at it that way. When I look back at my life, um, there's tons of moments like that where it's like, people are like, you can't do this or you won't do this. I'm like, it may not show up on here. I'm not a huge guy. I'm 5'9", and I mean, um, not the fastest runner. Never was. I was just fast enough. And but I think that's just something that I never really believed. And I was like, if I'm going to fail, that's fine. Like, I'll fail. I'll learn something from it as a result. But I'm not going to fail myself, right?
how did, is that something you're born with? Is that something you cultivated through sports or other such things? Like, how did you develop that as a mindset?
Um, Probably just growing up with it. So I'm one of 8 boys. And I have 2 other brothers that also became Army Special Forces. They served in 5th Group as well. Some of them are retired and moved on to other things now. And there's one still serving active, but we're uh we're just extremely competitive, as you might imagine, in that environment. And I think on some level I was born with it. Like, my dad used to share a story all the time when he was alive that I was probably 4 or 5. And I had 2 older brothers. I was the third. And I had 2 cousins that were the same age as my older brothers. And they came over to visit and we were all hanging out. And my dad talks about being in the living room talking with his brother and my aunt, and my uncle. All of a sudden, all 4 of them, my 2 older brothers and my 2 older cousins, were carrying me out of the room into the backyard over their head. And before they could say anything, I was like, that's it. You guys are in trouble now. I've got you exactly where I want you. I don't remember this. um, but on some level, I was born with, I don't know, that confidence or whatever. Um, and I think that's a big part of it, is just believing in yourself and being able to look past your failures, right?
You're a public speaker. Are these some of the topics you talk about?
Yeah. I talk about these things quite a bit, about resilience, moving past some of the challenges in your life, right? And then a little bit more, I do touch on leadership, but more of a leadership through influence, because that's a lot of what Special Forces does, right? We work with partner forces that we don't have direct control over. And so we have a mission to an objective to get to. Sometimes it aligns really closely with theirs. Sometimes it takes some convincing and some talking too. And so it's more of a not a direct leadership, but leading from the middle almost, leading through influence as opposed to authority. And so that's a big part of it. Um, and I actually enjoy those moments speaking about it. It's always a lot of fun. And it's one of those things, and this actually comes a lot from my time in special forces, is the enemy always gets a vote in every mission that you do, right? So there's never going to be a time where everything's perfect. And being able to absorb like the failures, the hiccups, or whatever it is, and see a path from where you are to where you need to be. And sometimes even changing that direction. Like we would always brief at the beginning. Since I was the medic, I always tell everyone, I was like, I was never the primary plan, right? Like if I was doing my job, we were like alternate, more likely contingent or emergency plan at that point. And one of the things I would always brief is when I was mission incapable, right? When I couldn't complete the mission anymore. If we hit this point and we've taken this many casualties or whatever, I I won't be able to continue as the medic. I'll be able to continue as a shooter, but we'll be black on medical supplies. And that dictates a little bit more of like, okay, well, then at what point does the objective need to shift? And so that was one of those things that also like bleeding through influence is I couldn't tell them, hey, you can't do this. The objective needs to shift. But I could give them the information that they needed and help them understand my limitations at that point. Right. And maybe where the mission changes to procuring more medical supplies through alternate means because we can't get a direct resupply or whatever it is. But being able to support that and understand that like, just because I say this is my limitation doesn't mean that that's going to dictate where life is going for all of us.
What message do you have for guys who want to become special forces, Army, or other branches? They don't just have to
Yeah.
Army. From the lessons you learned, EOD in the Air Force, Army Special Forces medic, if you could sit in front of some of these guys and gals, depending on what branch it is,
hmm
what would you say to them?
Don't sell yourself short and don't quit. Um, the job I fell into, it's actually funny you say that. The job I fell into in the National Guard and 20th Group is on their training cell. So I do a lot of preparing soldiers to go to selection and the Q course. And that's one of the things that I always tell them is don't give up on yourself and don't quit, right? Like make someone else choose that. As you go through the Special Forces qualification course, one of the phases was SEER. And I know you know a lot about that, Michael. But it's one of those times where, go ahead.
No, I was going to say for the listening audience, you might not know
Oh, yeah.
what that is.
Yeah. So SEER is our survival, evasion, resistance, and escape. And you learn how to do all of those. So survive and evade. Ideally, you never get captured. And then the resistance is if you do get captured, right? And then eventually looking for ways to escape that, right? So you spend about 21 days in this process, surviving, going through all these lessons on how to survive in different environments, how to evade capture, and how to link back up with U.S. forces, and then how to resist if you are captured and just survive that experience. And a good portion of it, you are a prisoner of war, where you're getting questioned, interrogated, slapped around a little bit here and there. You understand this beforehand. They're very clear with what's going to happen, and you sign on for it. Like so, you at this point you volunteered to be a Green Beret, and now you're volunteering to go through this specialized training. And what you walk away with is, there's a large amount of skills that you come away with that. But the more important thing that I think you walk away with is that life is never that bad, right? Even in the worst of moments, like being stuck in a little box, which did happen to me. And they put a hood on my head, stuck me in a box, and I heard people like screaming and freaking out in that room in their boxes because some people have claustrophobia. I never been like really great with it. And so I always chose to confront that fear. I took out cave exploring and things like that, spelunking.
Cool.
Um, and they locked me in there and I struggled to breathe a little bit. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, what's good about this? Right.
Wow.
Like asking myself, like there's plenty of bad things happening, right? I don't have to look for those. I'm finding them without even having the ability to see them. But I stopped, held my breath for half a second so that I wasn't panicking because it was tight. It was pressing up against the front of my chest and the back. I was a little bit larger at the time. I bench pressed more and I was younger, right? Um, and then I just slowed my breathing. And I realized I'm comfortable enough. No one's hurting me. No one's bothering me right now. And more importantly, no one's watching me. So I found a position where I could lock my legs. I got comfortable and I went to sleep.
Wow. Okay.
I was awoken rudely, pulled out. My legs were asleep. I couldn't walk. I fell on the ground and luckily I had a hood on my head because I was just laughing so hard. Even though like waking up was terrible, I had just had like this wonderful success in my life in the lowest of my lows and realizing that like life gets bad, it gets hard.
So you mentioned managing your breath, kind of managing the mind and the monkey mind, as the Buddhists would call it.
Mhm.
Is that something that's taught to you guys, or just something you happen to know on your own?
I mean, it's taught a little bit. They teach you a lot about like mastering your emotions in the moment. Um, and they go over it because losing control of your emotions, especially in a scenario where you're a prisoner and your freedoms have been taken away, is one of the worst things you can do. It's not only going to hurt you, but it's going to hurt anyone associated with you.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a very important survival mechanism. But in that moment, they're pushing your limits so that you can grow and see exactly where you are. So I I looked at it in that way of like, how can I turn these like horrible moments into good moments? And now I look back on those 21 days of being hungry, struggling to find a good time to sleep because you're evading through the night so you don't sleep. And then eventually you get captured and you end up in a prisoner of war camp. You're exhausted. You've just gone through this ordeal. You're uncomfortable. You're filthy. You're hungry. And ultimately, life is not that bad, right? Because you're still alive. Like I was still walking. Everything was still okay, right? There was hope on the end there. And I think that's the big thing, actually, when you look at it, like that I took away from all of this is looking at, looking at, I always had that end in sight, right? I didn't know if I was going to make it at any different phase of the course, but I always hoped that I would, right? I hoped that one day I would don the green beret and like my family would be there, it'd be great, and I'd go on to do great things. And I think is it Nietzsche that said it? And Viktor Frankl echoed this quite a bit in his books, where it's like someone who has a why can endure anyhow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I think as I look back at my life, I didn't know this at the time. I wasn't very well educated. I didn't have a college degree going into any of this. I did that after I became a Green Beret. I was like, oh, well, I'll pursue a formal education. And did that while I was deployed sometimes when I was home. And looking back now at what I've read and what I now know, there's a lot of hope that built that resilience, right? And I think once you lose that hope, you kind of lose that why. And then even the most simple things in your life just become difficult with that.
Now, with all that experience, I understand that you're now in grad school to become
Hmm.
mental health practitioner of sorts. And I'm wondering, like, how did you go from being a Green Beret to, and I know you said you're now consulting as an EOD tech training within the services, right? Maybe the Army, you said, but
Hmm.
go from that to like, I want to become a therapist.
Yeah, that was quite the journey as well, I must say. Um, so I as I was getting out of active duty, I was looking at where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do. And a bunch of people had sold me on going and getting a business degree, an MBA. And so I applied to some schools. I got into a few and I decided to go with the University of North Carolina. They had a really good business program and started started doing it. And a bunch of my classes I really enjoyed. But I started noticing a lot of them I just really, it wasn't even so much that I didn't enjoy them. I just hated them. Like I wanted nothing to do with them. Um, and had to have like a really honest moment with myself and say, is this the path that I want to take? I was dealing with a class that I was failing, um, being told that, like, well, I could kind of get a low pass on it because I was close enough. I could do some makeup work. Um, and I didn't feel okay about that. I was like, I'm struggling with this. I need to know this. And talking with my counselor, they're like, well, I mean, that's going to set you back. I don't know if that's the right choice. And I was like, I don't know if continuing is the right choice. And I was like, how close am I to getting a graduate certificate in business or business strategy or anything? And so we looked at it. I had one more class that I needed to do to get a graduate certificate in business strategy and entrepreneurship. And I was like, okay, well, I'll do that class, but I'm not going to finish with the program. And when that happened, I sat there for a minute and finished the class and got an amazing wife. She's great at helping me um, understand myself a little bit better. We sat down and I was like, I don't know what I want to do. I was like, I've always thought about doing medicine, but as I went down those paths, it didn't feel right. I'd been doing medicine in austere areas, and she asked me very pointedly, she's like, do you want to sit in a clinic or an ER for like 12 hours a day? And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. And she was like, okay, well, what did you enjoy about your experience at UNC? And I was like, well, I really liked marketing. Surprisingly, I liked my sales class and I liked my business strategy classes. And she was like, well, you like psychology then? She's like, all of those are influencing a population. And I was like, you're right. I do. So I started looking into psychology programs, had some amazing people I had worked with in Fifth Special Forces Group, had a performance psychologist, and randomly him and I were at the same training event, just observing, and ran into him. And I was like, caught up with him a little bit, told him my aspirations. I was like, maybe I'll go into performance psych or something along those lines. And he's like, no, go into clinical, Brent. He's like, you need to do clinical. He's like, you'd be great there. Gave me a long list of reasons. And I was like, oh, okay. So I looked at clinical programs and settled on the Chicago School of Psychology. And he was right. I have enjoyed it so much.
How far are you into the program, or how much?
I have a little less than a year of classwork left, and then I start into my internships.
Do you know what kind of population you want to work with at this time, or is this kind of too premature to?
No, yeah, I definitely do. So one of the things that I loved is I got blown up two times within a year, right? Like at the very end of my time in Afghanistan, and then came home, got married, deployed again, and got blown up again on that deployment. It was a rough year. Um, but after that, they kind of like it was a command referral to psych because I had received two traumatic brain injuries within a year, and they're like, hey, you have to go get a psych eval. You need to talk to people, which was good. I was pretty angry um, at the world in general and had just a phenomenal experience going through that process. But the one thing that kind of stuck out to me in all of that was um, just sitting there. I would walk out of the therapist's office feeling better, like I had a direction to go, but feeling depressed. And my therapist's office at Fifth Group was right next to the gym. And so as I was walking out, I would hit the gym and it would make all the difference in the world. I ended up with like on a high with a lot of clarity. The depression was gone and it was synergistic, honestly. And as I've looked at this, I'm like, how can I help other veterans and other individuals to have a similar experience to mine? Right. And it was serendipitous that all of this happened and kind of drove that. And so I would love to work with those populations like first responders, veterans, and individuals that are struggling to find that place. And instead of just sitting there and ruminating over like what's going on and trying to get to the root of it, um, almost incorporating that into like physical fitness quite a bit. Where, like, if you think about it, if you and I were to be working out, Michael, we'd probably just be talking about our lives, right? Similar to when you sit across from a client and you talk to them. And the difference in this would be at the end of that, you have some homework, some psychological homework and things to go away with. So you're leaving on a high. You're hopefully improving yourself physically as well as mentally and emotionally. And just the aim being overall wellness. Because I know I struggled with all of those significantly when I got out. And yeah, it was just that focus on what's next, what's in the future, my why, my purpose that really made a huge difference in the outcome that I experienced leaving the service.
I think it's a great integration of the psychological and the physiological to somehow bridge those two gaps.
Yeah.
But in my work, I do the same thing. Like
Yeah.
my clients have to be on some kind of physical training regime and diet, nutrition, sleep, all the things. Because I find if they dial in their physiology, the psychological changes are easier to make. If you feel like shit, if you're not eating well, you're not moving, you're not sleeping, it's really hard to make the changes you need to make along those lines too.
Yeah. Yeah. And it just, like I said, it came across very serendipitously. And I'm like, well, maybe we find a place where we can integrate all that together. Right. And um, so that's my goal. I'm still a long ways away from being able to actually practice that. Um, but we'll see.
I definitely wish you luck on that one. People watching this and because you're a public speaker, and I want to learn more, about Brent, and maybe have him come and speak to my group or my corporation or whatever it happens to be, how they find out more information about you and reach out to you.
Yeah, I have a website. It's brent-fuchs.com. Um, and then honestly, reaching me on LinkedIn is one of the best. That will how we connected.
Exactly.
Those are really the best ways. It hasn't launched yet, but I am in the process of launching with a couple of friends of mine. A It's more of a community, but it focuses around like physical events. So like rucking, running, or whatever it is. All of us have done a lot of events and racing, and now as we're scattered across the United States, it's kind of hard to get back together to compete and run races together. And so we decided to start trying to pilot a platform. It's called Rise Events Co. And we're hoping to launch the website this next month. We'll see. We're looking at domain names right now. But with the focus being on that, like kind of like focusing on 4 areas of wellness and connection that we have, like resilience, some social interaction, learning and growing all the time, and then the spiritual component that we have, regardless of what it is. And so it's more my friend's dream, and I've been helping with that. And it's been super fulfilling to kind of go along with this and see where it's going and see the people that are wanting to like jump on board because they're looking for a community where they can connect with like-minded people.
It's really fascinating. There's a lot of parallels. I was actually in an MBA program
Hmm.
I did. I left with in my graduate work in psychology, which is similar to you. But actually, I with another Army Special Forces guy, Will Rovello, and a couple other folks, I created Team Foodishin, and you just laid out. I mean, you got your own thing going on, but it's very parallel
Yeah.
because I was rocking with some guys, 21 to 30, 21 to 31, 33. I could be their fathers. It's kind of fun. There's no place for us to go to talk, like they're guys, so they do we have stupid guy conversations, but also like serious, like wives and girlfriends and family stuff. And they were saying like there's no place for them to go to really, have those kind of deep interpersonal, authentic, open, honest conversations while doing something physical. So it's built. I love to hear that you guys are working on something like that as well, because men and human beings, just generally speaking, need more places like that to go. So
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I've looked at is you talk a lot about advocacy and social justice in the counseling space, right? And as we've learned about this, I was in a class and we were talking once again about social justice and serving underserved populations, and it kind of like spurred a thought in my mind. I was like, who is most underserved when it comes to like mental health and having help there? And looked it all up in government statistics. And when you look at like suicide rates compared to demographics, um, underserved populations, like right up in the top were most men, whether they were homosexual or heterosexual, they were just really struggling to reach out to those services. And I was like, you know what? Like it helped me through a lot in those times. And luckily, I had a wife that didn't judge me and actually encouraged me to go that route and made a huge difference in the outcome of my transition from the military and going through those traumas and everything and just dealing with my new identity. And when I realized that, I was like, man, there's got to be a way to remove this stigma. And I think a big part of that is, like you had said, like building that community that's okay with that. And
God bless you guys for doing that. When you guys launch, come back to me. I'd love to have you guys on to talk about it.
yeah, yeah.
And obviously, in a couple of years when you're done with your internships and your license, come back and we can continue the conversation. And can you share your website one more time?
It's Brent-Fuchs .com.
Awesome.
That's it. You can go on there, learn a lot about me. Um, my wife and I update the website on occasion, and you can reach out directly through there. My LinkedIn is on there as well if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn. Um, just be patient with me. I do have a busy life right now. I actually left a training event to we finished it early, which was amazing. I was a little stressed about the timeline. I was like, hold on, it's going to be cutting it close. If traffic's rough, I'm going to run in the house, but it just went perfect today and it was nice. So,
Well, and let me encourage folks to check it on LinkedIn too. You do some good postings. That's how we actually met. It's agreement back and forth, which led us to have a nice conversation and then it's a recorded conversation.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And hopefully we can get Jeff on sometime too and all of us talk through that. That was a really good engagement. I loved it. So.
Yeah. Hey, Brent, great to see you again. Good conversation. And wish you luck with the school and all the other great things you're up to, man.
All right. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on.